And welcome back, everybody, to Hands-On Apologetics. And as you know, this is the dojo where we talk about how to explain, defend the faith. And today's guest is someone who ranks very high on my list of my favorite apologists. That's Trent Horn. Trent, after his conversion to the Catholic faith, earned master's degrees in the field of theology, philosophy, and bioethics. He serves as staff apologist for Catholic Answers, where he specializes in teaching Catholics to graciously and persuasively engage with those who don't agree with us. Trent models his approach each week on Catholic Answers Live and his podcast, The Council of Trent. He's an adjunct professor at Holy Apostles College, and he's the author of over 9 books. I know it has to be more than 9, including today's book, which is Devil's Advocate, Facing My Inner Anti-Catholic. And Trent, welcome back to Hands-On Apologetics.
Gary, always fun to be with you on your show. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's always a joy because I know you, and I know you really pressure test all your arguments. You field test them. It's not just you're sitting around one day and say, oh, that's a great argument. I'm sure it'd be very persuasive. You go through a whole process to make sure that it is going to be persuasive for those who don't share our presuppositions. You know, what's really cool is I found that your devil's advocate, which you named David, right? He doesn't pull any punches. This is not a fluff book where Trent Horn comes up and, does these soft pitches to knock out of the park. There are some really difficult objections and responses throughout the whole book. Man, starting off with difficulties with evil, that's a great example of you not pulling any punches. I mean, this is where I think a lot of people, when they run into atheists, it almost always centers on that. And that's one of those areas most Catholic apologists, I think, shy away from, explaining the some of these issues that, my favorite is like the hell problem, like you have.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I think that this comes up, especially people who engage in apologetics, that if you just start out and if you don't understand the gravity behind the problem of evil and the problem of hell, which the problem of hell is really a subsection of the problem of evil. If you think, oh, well, the problem of evil is easily dismissed, you haven't really wrestled with the problem. Even if there are versions of the problem that are somewhat easily dismissed, like really overreaching logical arguments from evil that try to show God and evil are logically incompatible, that God could never have any reason to allow any evil whatsoever. A lot of people, those aren't that hard to overcome, but the problem gets more difficult when you get into the nitty-gritty of it, and also when you get into the emotional things that people suffer. So as I recall in the book, I talk a lot, like, well, if you're going to really run a really strong argument from evil, you want to try to focus on aspects of evil. We have a hard time explaining why God would tolerate them. And one of those that's come up recently in philosophy of religion we're hearing more about is the problem of animal suffering. And for me, and I've never really struggled, and once again, I'm not talking about I'm going to answer everybody's doubts and objections. That's not what this book is for. It's about what I struggle with. And I don't struggle with human evil that much. Some people have a real hard time with it, but I understand that, look, if God can compensate us in the afterlife, and I just don't know what else God would do. Like he could really restrict our free will, our actions, but that would make human life, it would really lower the moral consequences and a lot of the value of human life if we're really, kind of puppets, if you will, in this regard. But it gets a lot harder, though, when you talk about things like the suffering of animals. Why would God create a world where animals suffer and they can't necessarily be compensated in a similar way to human beings? And so I explore that more in the book and say, okay, well, how could I, does this show, like, is the world look more like a godless world because you have all these animals that suffer, and it seems like, why would God let them suffer? It's not like human beings with free will and things like that. But then it gives me an opportunity to reflect and sit back. And one argument I find really compelling is that one reason to justify the suffering of animals is just that the existence of animals is a good thing. It's good that animals exist, and overall, it's a good in creation, and it's worth making them. Now, some people might say, "Oh, well, that's kind of cruel, though. God makes them, and then they suffer." But and I've offered this thought experiment in a number of ways. Like, would it be wrong for us to send a probe with life forms on it to create animal life on another planet? Or if all humans left Earth on a spaceship, should we destroy the Earth after we leave? That way the animals don't suffer anymore. Most people would say, well, no, I don't think we should do that. Okay, so it seems like we're okay with animals existing even though they have a lot of suffering. If human beings can tolerate allowing animals to exist that suffer, well, maybe God can have a reason for that. And I also explore that, and actually Jimmy Akin's done some work on this, and I'm very open to this possibility, that animals, there might be ways that God compensates them in the afterlife too. At least animals, so I guess I'd look at it this way. Either an animal doesn't really have conscious experience from one moment to the next, and if that's the case, suffering is not as bad for them because they're not conscious of it. Or if they are conscious of suffering from one moment to the next, they have some kind of persistent self, not like us, but some kind of self. Maybe that self could be compensated in the next life. It's not a popular view in theology, but it's a possible one. And if you have a doubt, all you need is a possible answer to deal with a doubt you have. And then the doubt is not as troublesome anymore.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah, I often find that when it comes to things like problems of evil, that the theist is often put in the position of trying to read God's mind and to access information we can access. So you're right. Just opening possibilities, I think, kind of relieves that tension.